Welcome to the Give Back Lab. I'm your host, Daniela DeGrandi. You've entered a space where bold voices, real stories, and unfiltered conversations come to life. Here in the lab, we're breaking bias, shifting thinking, and exploring the power of giving back through truth, vulnerability, and diverse perspectives. We celebrate diversity of thought and everything beautiful that makes us human. This isn't just talk, it's real, it's raw, and it's exactly the kind of space we need. We're unlearning, relearning, and evolving together. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Give Back Lab. Today, I am honored to be joined by Dr. Rick Mask, who is going to come and talk to us about the fabulous research and work that he's doing in human connection. We're going to learn a little bit about who he is as a human, what he's doing, the work that he's doing, the reasons why, and everything in between. I'm so excited to start this conversation. Thank you, Dr. Mask, for making time for us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing this space with me and inviting me to be here with you. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and, share some information about human connection. So thank you.
That's so
Um,
exciting. I'm so excited.
Me too, honestly. I've been waiting to connect with you for quite some time and I've been so extremely busy. So I really appreciate your flexibility and willingness to connect with me. So thank you. Um, yeah, so I really got engaged with human connection through my doctoral program. My dissertation and the focus of my doctorate are really just around operations management. So it was, in some ways, can be viewed as kind of the opposite of what I'm focused on. But my unit of measure within my dissertation was social capital. And since then, so I've been on this mission of learning more about social capital since 2017, and just really trying to understand its relevancy in our world, in our society, and I'd, through that connected with a few people that are, I guess modern day researchers of the topic. So one of them being Tristan Claridge, who was in New Zealand at the time. He's now in Australia. He's the president of the International Social Capital Association, and which I'm one of the founding members of. And I spent a lot of time talking to Tristan and really get into the seminal works around social capital, a lot of which you'll see Bob Putnam's name come up, Robert Putnam, who's a professor at Harvard, and he wrote Making Democracy Work, Bowling Alone, and other titles as well. Um, but it really spoke to me, and honestly, I have ADHD, so I hyperfixate. So hyperfixating on a topic that has me want to connect with other human beings can't go wrong there. So, I really dove in and wanted to see where social capital was in our society, and and connecting with the authors that were talking about it, getting a more granular level understanding of it, and the three constructs that I tend to focus on when looking at social capital are relational capital, cognitive capital, and structural capital. So, most recently, the work I'm looking at is really around the relational capital piece because I'm wanting to understand what human beings need in order to engage with social capital in our society. So, in regards to how human beings connect, what causes us to want to trust other people, what causes us to want to have deep, meaningful connections with other people, and what hinders that. Because the other unfortunate thing that I've ran into through my research is the fact that we're in a loneliness epidemic. And I had wrote an article back in, I believe 2019, so pre-pandemic, on what loneliness looked like in our society and what was contributing to loneliness in our society. Um, and I was asked to update that article as of this year. And when I updated it, I found nothing but more bad news. It just continues to increase the amount of loneliness or people reporting loneliness that they're feeling within our society. So, being focused on human connection, and wanting to understand what um, what kind of environment creates the space to have deep, meaningful connection with people. I wanted to be able to contribute to that in a positive way. So I've really focused my research and my data collection over the past few months on that, understanding how humans are connecting, how connected they feel, um, and I'm hoping to report out on that early next year.
That's awesome. I'd love to learn more about the comparison study, right? The comparison to 2017, and why is it that you think, right? COVID aside, I'm sure that COVID had something to do with it, but what other things? I find the reason I'm so intrigued. So I find myself having this conversation a lot, and I've noticed that as technology advances, people are more into, their phones, their iPads, their laptops, and they're less about connection, right? So there was that birth of imposter syndrome and that that verbiage that came to life, right? And so I was a guest lecturer at NYU last week for a couple of classes at NYU Tandon School of Engineering, sorry. And I was speaking to these students who are in the School of Engineering, and they're using AI, and they're learning technology, and they're learning management and leadership. And it was a management and leadership course that I was guest lecturing in. And this very topic came up, right? Because they asked me, they said, what do you think makes us successful? What piece of advice? And I said, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to network, 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 right?
Mhm.
And that is putting yourself out there and meeting people and making yourself really vulnerable, right? Allowing yourself that space. Because it's really easy to get lost behind technology, behind the screens. It's also very comfortable, right? Because you don't
Mhm.
have to, put yourself out there and risk being judged or misunderstood or whatever it is. And you can have a persona that you choose behind a screen, right? So that's where that whole imposter syndrome thing comes in. You don't, I was trying to encourage them, and I tried to encourage every person that I talked to really, this is your space and you have earned it, right? You have earned
Mhm.
it, and you are entitled to operate within this space from a place of goodness and authenticity, and to continue to develop that skill. So with all of that said, when you went and you looked at that study that you did in 2017 and now you compare it in 2025, what lessons came out of it? What information came out of it, and what lessons can we take away with that light? And please disagree with anything that I've said. You are
Yeah.
absolutely the expert and I am not.
Well, no, I appreciate what you said, and you touched on a whole lot. So before I even jump into, the article, I just want to recognize and appreciate the fact that you're encouraging people to be their authentic selves, and I think that I'll dig deeper into that as I go through some commentary. But I just think it's so critically important that we approach others as our own unique selves, our true selves, because that kind of mirrors, to them that they're allowed to do that as well, and I think the more people that do that, the more we are increasing the possibility for deep connection, for true connection, and just letting people, know that we're safe, because we're being our authentic self, and not putting that mask on. So I just wanna say thank you for encouraging, others to do that. I think that's the kind of intentionality, that we need in our society, so thank you. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and I'm glad you got to do it where you got to do it too. Congrats on being able to be a guest
Thank
lecturer in
you.
that space.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It is my mantra. Be your authentic self, live unapologetically, don't do it from a place of malice. Be a good human, give back to the world. That's why we're at the Give Back Lab, right? Just
Yep.
give of yourself. It's my soul. It's my soul's mission to
That's awesome.
continue to encourage that. So thank you.
Love
But
that.
sorry, go ahead, continue.
Oh, no worries. I just had to appreciate that. Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of data out there from, factual sources you can look up, and a lot of what I've reported on in regards to loneliness to this point, whether it be the early article or the revision, is the research that's out there from the Pew Institute and other places like that. So what they do is they give an examination of how people are reporting how lonely they feel, but there's not a lot of why in there,
Mm.
unfortunately. So until my research is completed and I gather up this information, I will be honestly presenting a lot of speculation and examination just from conversations that I've had and research that I've read and trying to synthesize all that together. But what I will say is I think there's a few factors in play, and you hit on some of them tremendously. People putting out a false persona via social media or putting out the perception that they want other people to see of them. There is safety in that because you are behind that screen and you're able to filter whatever information comes out. You have the ability to post certain pictures, don't post certain pictures, whatever. So you're really, in a lot of ways, feeding the ego self, which have said before, and I'll say it again, like I'm trying to destroy the ego. If I had one wish for humanity that we could destroy that need to present this most optimal version of our existence and just be real and just be raw and truly care and connect with each other. So I really feel like it's an opportunity, a digital, hyper connected opportunity for us to really, really promote our ego self, which when we talk about the constructs of social capital, that can live in the structural capital portion of that equation because it is the persona or the way people perceive us in and outside of our presence. So it lives there. And it's not that it's not important, it's just when people are utilizing that as their form of connectivity. So that kind of leads into my next commentary, which is just to say that, and I've said this a few times too, I really feel like that our brains are like at a point of evolution where we're like 50 years past the industrial revolution. That's where our brain lives. But we're dealing with communication technology that is for a different time, a different age, a different human being. And we have not created good rules around how we utilize all of those modes of connectivity. I find it sad that we're in an age of the ability, we have so many ways, we have hyper connectivity, but we're not utilizing that to actually connect. Um, and I think that's just because we weren't prepared for it. We are facing a situation where we're making rules for our children around technology usage, good behaviors, bad behaviors, don't do this on social media, protect yourself in this way. And we're making all these rules for our children. Nobody made those rules for us. They didn't have to. We weren't engaging with protective behaviors around technology when our minds were developing. We were hyper fixated on how we could utilize this new thing with unfiltered. And I mean there was a time when there wasn't even regulations in place for websites and things. Like literally the early days of the internet was like the wild west, and how we connected with people was like the wild west. So there was no regulation, no, beyond just our own human skill set, there was nothing out there. We were just running rampant. We've never made any rules for ourselves, and I think our default um, ways that we attempt to connect with others are failing us. I think that we are, chasing instant quick dopamine hits and tricking our brains into believing that we're feeling connected. So whether it be through doom scrolling on social media, putting out posts and receiving likes on that, we're not really taking the time to have this communicative conversation with others that would result in deep, meaningful connection. We're having this asynchronous interaction with others. And in the moment, our brain saying, "Oh, yes, we got 100 likes on our posts," quick dopamine release. At the end of the week, when we're sitting there alone in our living room and, we've doom scrolled for 5 hours and we're done with that, we feel really lonely because we haven't spent a lot of time actually connecting with other human beings. We spent a lot of time being very efficient in how we're attempting to connect. What is the easiest way that I can do this? And if you, have a really intense job, which a lot of us do now, you're trying to find the most operationally effective way to get your job done. You're doing as much as you possibly can, and that just bleeds over into how you attempt to connect with other human beings outside of those settings. Um, so, our most efficient way to feel as though we are connecting with others is leaving us kind of like deprived, dehydrated, if you will, in feeling actually connected with others. Um, so that's my synthesization of what I've read and the information I've gathered. I'm trying to, um, I have a research study going on right now. I'm collecting surveys, and I'll be, during the holiday season, I'll be actually synthesizing that data, and hopefully I can um, not only give more research-based support for what I'm thinking, what I'm understanding from my interactions with other humans, but also try to create a kind of formula to help us connect better.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that is key, right? So you said a couple of things that I love, right? Death of the ego. Ego is
Mm.
huge, right? And I think that it is used, in my opinion, it is used as a defense mechanism to mask insecurities. Insecurities that are born through non-exposure, right? So people cannot learn and grow unless they're exposed to things. But
Mm.
because those things make us uncomfortable and we have to be vulnerable in that in our mindset to do it, we don't engage, right? And so as a result, these egos tend to continue to grow fed out of the insecurity, right? And in again, in just
Yep.
my opinion.
Yep.
And so I agree with you 100% that if we can kill the ego, right, and consciously own and accept and be really real, authentic, and raw with ourselves about what our insecurities are, that is the only way that we as individuals will continue to develop. Um, How do we and I don't know if you've done research when we were younger, there were less and well, when I was younger, you're younger than me. When I was younger, there were less club sports, if you will, right? You played like the
Huh.
town rec sports or your school sports or the little league or whatever, but there was less structure around these kinds of things, and I feel like today, in the recent past, the generations, they were born with cell phones in their hand or iPads, right? Pretty much, I'm food shopping, I'm walking through the park. How many strollers I've seen when I go for a walk through the park, and the kids are playing on an iPad or a tablet of some sort or a phone of some sort as their mother is walking them through the park or the nanny or whoever, right? The person is walking through the park. So I look at it and I'm always puzzled because the benefit of and the beauty in that activity, which is the person doing the walking gets the benefit of the exercise and the fresh air, and the child that is in the stroller gets the benefit of seeing nature and beauty and experiencing and learning through visual cues and visual action, right? Just through experience. Um, but they don't see any of that. Uh,
Yes.
And and that I think creates insecurity and so this death of the ego thing, it's almost like we are raising that. Right?
Yes.
Um, what is your opinion on the the generation, the recent generational psyche with this ego death and this ego, how do we I think that in order for us to get out of it, we have to call it out and
Hmm.
acknowledge it, right? So can you help us acknowledge what some of those things are that we are doing that cause those things to come alive in individuals, right? How does the ego come out in a person? What is that born of? And some of it's personality, but
Yeah.
where is it mainly?
Yeah. So there's so much there. And I just want to validate some of the things that you said. Um, I was in that environment too when you said, school sports and things like that. It was less like this club sport outside of that system. So where, I think there was a lot of benefit to those sports situations. When I played Little League, I was playing right alongside my classmates and continuing to develop relationships with those individuals and deepen our relationship. And obviously we win together, we lose together, and that impacts how we interact with each other in the school setting as well. So there's a lot of things there. And I think for me, that's mainly observational, but I hear you and I just want to validate that and I see that. Whereas now we are putting kids in a situation where we are and I've seen it in a lot of these club sports scenarios where we're saying like, you're the best or we're not doing this. Like it's not an opportunity to show up, learn, potentially fail. It's like if and I've heard the statement from parents, if we're paying this money for you to do this thing, to be on this traveling team, success is the only option. And we are promoting that like do or die kind of mentality. Like
Mhm.
you're gonna be the best, or we're not gonna do it at all. And I'm not against encouraging kids. I think but it's helping them to discover who they are and find what they are good at or what they want to pursue. And I think we're losing some of that. And I think as far as just participation in clubs, Bob Putnam in Bowling Alone, that's the whole like focus of that book is to say that the lack of civic engagement, the lack of us going out, like you said, to the parks and being present with other people and doing things together, that lack of civic engagement is what's causing the deterioration of our democracy within our society. So there's a lot of research, there is a lot of commentary on on that topic. But I just want to throw that out there too. But going back to what you had asked around the ego and how that's created and everything, I think yeah, it's definitely born of a lot of things. It is definitely a protection mechanism, and it's also taught through what is quote unquote acceptable or not acceptable within our society. I think that there's a lot of archaic viewpoints out there around roles within our society. Like, I didn't understand what positive masculinity was until I went out there on my own and researched on my own, pursued that on my own, and really looked at myself and the things that I was doing that was purporting behaviors that I no longer wanted to be associated with. Um, and I hate that it took the absence of my father. My father passed away whenever I was 3 years old. He had passed away in an altercation with the police. Um, I in the absence of my father, took it upon myself to understand what that was, and I think in the presence of my father, unfortunately, I would be purporting, what I'd consider, would be toxic masculine behaviors in our society, and when I say that, I'm not saying that, like, abusive behaviors. I'm just saying, standing in spaces like, I recognize that my voice and who I am and my presence has an impact on spaces. And I just ensure that I am making space for other people and I am elevating voices that need to be elevated and I am making sure that people feel safe around me, that my presence as just a man in certain situations can make people feel uncomfortable, and I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. Just recognizing those things, there's a lot that go into that, but it's just one of those things where I'm just putting intentionality behind understanding who I am and what my presence means in certain spaces. And that's what for me, my journey of like trying to destroy my ego, that's a big piece of it. And like I said, my ego was born out of my mother attempting to promote hyper masculinity within the house in the absence of my
Mhm.
father's presence. So it was hard for me to even grasp that I was being a certain way or purporting certain things that I didn't want to. Because I reflect back and I'm like, well, I was raised by two women, my sister and my mother. So how can I possibly have any ego around masculinity?
Right.
And coming to terms with that. Um, so it's just like I said, it's a really personal journey for everybody. But it's born out of the things that we're taught. It's born out of expectations in our society. One of the big things I had to get past was my sister. had a massive car wreck whenever I was 9 years old, and my family was freaking out. You know, the adults were crying, freaking out. I was in a state of shock. I was 9 years old, and this person I look up to and I care about, she is changed forever. And at the time, I thought she might actually die, so I'm in a state of shock. And my family's gathering around me and telling me that I'm so strong because I'm not breaking down. So, I kept hearing this narrative that as a boy and a young man and a man, that if I was silent and stoic, that I was strong. That meant I was strong. And it had me repress so much of my emotions and my emotional awareness and my ability to truly be empathetic for others because I was taught that my silence and stoicism in those moments was strength. Um, and I'm just giving all these examples for me personally because that's my life to understand how like what influenced my ego. And I think a lot of people out there have had similar experience that have influenced who they are. And then societal expectations of what I'm supposed to be. My professional career, I work in higher ed administration, and I've had instances where people have seen me and literally said, I didn't think you'd look like that. I went to my daughter's school and they were like, Dr. Mask? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I didn't think you'd look like that. I'm like, what am I supposed to look like? You know? Um, but it's a lot of that too. It's societal expectations and being comfortable that other people are uncomfortable. Like, okay, I don't look like a doctor to you. Well, I hope that my presence has updated your mental understanding of what a doctor would look like or a professor would look like.
Right.
Um, but that's part of that showing up authentically and then giving other people space to do the same. Um, it's okay to be you and be something amazing.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that. I love that. And it's okay to take other people's judgments and not make them your own, right? It's not
absolutely.
what I expected you to look like. Well, what are you judging me? Why are you judging? No, no. They were being honest and authentic. It is not what, they probably expected you to have a nice slick back, kind of hair with a bow tie or something. But right, everybody has these visions in their head of what something is or should be or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and allowing space for people to have their ideas and recognize them and not take it on your own, right? Like not be offended. I love that you weren't offended by it because it's like, well, okay, well, I hope that the value that I have given you is that you realized you had this bias and now you don't anymore.
Right.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner, right?
Yep.
The the other thing that you spoke about that I'd like to talk about is your 9-year-old self, right? And I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm sorry about your father, and I'm sorry that you went through that in such a young age. And then, just a few short years later, you're in another trauma, right, with your sister.
Yeah.
And as a society, I think that, and I'd like for you to answer this question on a worldly basis, right? Because I know that you're not just focused in one area, but as a society, we have this expectation, at least here in America, but in most of the world, I'm going to go on a limb and say that men are strong and men don't show emotion and men don't cry and, just buckle up, buttercup, and be fine, right? And yes, men naturally, when you talk about the masculine and a strong masculine, a secure masculine man, right? Leaders and leading the pack, et cetera, et cetera. But there's still allowed emotion, right? A secure individual masculine mentality is still allowed to have emotion. And we don't encourage that enough. How does that kind of thing contribute? And then on the opposite side, the feminine side, right? Women sometimes are the feminine mindset. Sometimes you have to operate in a masculine mindset as a feminine, which is, and I've been there, right? So it becomes a contradictory thing in your brain, right? Like, all right, I really love to wear dresses, but today I have to wear the pants. And and whether it's at home or in business or in whatever life circumstance is, sometimes you have to be either one. And women get judged and criticized and demeaned for being too masculine, and men get judged and criticized and demeaned for having emotion, right? So how do we start to normalize that in this
Mhm.
society? And is that a human thing, as in that's where we are globally, right? Is there any country or specific area that does this better? Is this just, where does this mindset come from? And
Yeah.
how do we evolve? How do we continue to evolve that, right? Like, but to make it better.
Yeah. Well, no, I want to recognize something you said, and I think it's amazing. And I think it's one of the biggest solves for this thing that we see is just recognition like you have. And I just want to, like I said, show appreciation for it. It's this understanding that the masculine and feminine aspects of the human experience exist within that of a man, a woman, genetic male, genetic female. It exists in everybody. There are moments when you and women have, you say, step into that masculine energy and do this thing, whatever it is, or, men show emotions or step into feminine energy. Like we have this ebb and flow that we do. Um, and and that goes, that it's not being a man is not meaning that I am in my, uh, you know, hard masculine 24/7. It's this ebb and flow of I still have to be caring and loving with my children,
Yes.
and I can do that in my masculine energy. It's not about assigning the things we do. I tried to break this down a while back because I was like, we've assigned masculine energy and feminine energy to tasks, and we've done that, and it does make for an efficient way to evaluate what is masculine and feminine. Like we were talking about earlier, like as human beings, we're trying to find efficient operating understandings of everything. That's what bias is. It's our mind trying to be efficient and make split second judgments on whatever we see because it allows us to get more done quicker. And that's what our goal is at work most of the time and everything else. So we we think that, you know, well, a man does this, 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 and this, and a woman does this, 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 and this, and we assign it to task. And particularly in today's society where we're sharing everything, there are stay-at-home dads, there are stay-at-home moms, there's couples of every combination you can think of. There's polyamory, there's all these things. With all the way we interact as human beings has evolved so much, and yet we've tried to keep this archaic view of tasks, like and associating masculinity or femininity to those tasks. So I'm just trying to encourage everyone to break that down and just think about, I've got to do all these things. How can I do that in positive masculine energy or positive feminine energy? Because it all has to be done. But regardless, I'm going off on a tangent and I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
addressing like this in our society, and is there anybody doing it better or worse? I think really, globally, we have, for a lot of reasons, religious based reasons, governmental reasons, and then honestly, in the most negative aspects, just to restrict the freedoms of someone else, we've assigned what what it means to be masculine or feminine to all the different things. I'll bring it back in there to the United States. You know, when we think of what a leader should be, we're trying to, in my mind, I'm not going to say we because I'm speaking and I do not want to apply this to the greater society, but you think of like someone who's able to understand a situation, synthesize the information of that situation, and make a decision that is the best decision for all involved. Like that's what you want to happen. And we have somehow assigned to that has to be free of emotion. We can't be emotional when we do that because emotions cloud judgment and all this. I think that what we need to do is take more time with decisions, do process our emotions and understand on an emotional level how it impacts people, and then make better decisions. Um, it all goes into this speed and efficiency and relying on bias to make these split-second judgments, and somehow because men show up in a way where we're told that to do this emotionless is the best way to do this, or do this with stoicism is the best way to do this, that we're assigned like some kind of role in that's it's just made our society completely shaped in a way that doesn't really make sense, because we're assigning tasks once again to femininity or masculinity, and giving everyone space to interact with the masculine and the feminine is where we need to be. And I feel like I'm just rambling, and I'm so sorry. It's just
No.
such an incredibly complex topic. Um, I really just have actively tried in my life to subvert gender roles when I hear things, when someone apologizes for, like, I've heard people apologize for the dishes not being done. Like in the
Right.
particular case that I was dealing with, it was a woman apologizing for the dishes not being done. The man in the home, the other person, the significant other, could have just as well done that task. It's this mentality of assigning that task, like homemaker or whatever you want to call it, to a gender, and that's what's, I think, still causing us problems across the board. I feel like I
The
haven't gotten
absence.
to an answer, and
No,
I'm
no.
sorry.
So no, it's this. I love it. I love it. It's fabulous. So it's really the absence of true partnership, right? Because in true partnership, here's the list of tasks that needs to be done, and we just need to start checking them off, right? This or that, and you may pick some that are more inclined to your abilities, right? So you may put the furniture together, or lift the furniture, or something like that, right? I think that the reason, and this is my opinion, the reason that the woman's apologizing for the dishes being done, and yes, the man could equally do the dishes or apologize for the dishes not being done, is because we still want to live, and I don't know if want is the right thing, but we still identify with the 19,
Mm,
40s, 50s kind of lifestyle of living.
mhm,
But we have, so businesses modernize all the time, right? We go from print to digital, we go from digital to AI and automation. Businesses want to grow and be profitable through modernization, right? But us humans have not done that for ourselves, I feel, right?
right.
We found a like we're still in the Model T.
Yep. Yes.
Right? Everybody's moving from hybrid to electric, and as humans, we're still in our Model T version. We haven't even like moved up, right? And you want to live in this mindset, and those that do that and do it well are actually truly living in that mindset, right? Maybe
Yes.
a stay-at-home husband or wife, it's gender neutral, right? But they're doing this and they're doing that because that is their quote unquote job. They are stay-at-home, and those are the tasks that they do. And, not to say on the weekends the other partner can't help, but that is their role. And the other partner goes out, whether male or female or doesn't matter, goes out and does the work and etc. But in a society where most couples or individuals are working, right? And you have two income households or three plus in different scenarios, there's still an expectation and mindset that is tradition. I'm going to use the word traditional, right? Just that was rooted at a point in time, and that hasn't evolved.
Right.
Um,
And it's societal conditioning too. And once again,
yeah,
locking in on what is the easiest way for me to understand something. And anything that falls outside of the bounds of that is hard to understand. I think men too, they fall into a martyrdom mentality where you hear men say, like, I'll do anything for my family, or I'm doing all this for my family. And you hear that, and it's a positive commentary to say, well, I'm glad that you do anything for your family. But the thing that they're missing is they're willing to go out and do all these things for their family, but what they're not willing to do is work on themselves to be the best version of themselves for their family. And
Right.
I think that's what men the trap that they fall into around not really digging into their emotions and remaining in that stoic place. And you can imagine all of the things that they would engage with in family life that would be disrupted by a man not addressing their emotions. Yes, they can go out and work 14 hours a day and bring in money, and be exhausted and come pass out and go to sleep, and that's their big contribution to the
Right.
family at large. But all the things that need to happen inside the household, with showing up and connecting with their son or their daughter around how, for their son, how that son should interact with someone else, a significant other, and what their daughter should expect from a significant other, all those things that would be passed down,
Right.
it's not happening. And then the readily available information for our children. So, previous generations, if you wanted to learn a skill, you had to ask. You had to go to your parent, you had to go to your grandparent and ask, "How do I do this thing?" And now information is so cheap and readily available, through YouTube and everything else, that we see, children, the current generation, really interacting with information and how to do things through those modes. And they may be learning something completely wrong. It may not be correct at all, but there's no sounding board of that expert in their life to help give them that skill. So it's creating a sense of hyper independence and within the children, that they don't need your advice. They don't care how you would have done it. They have a YouTube video that can show them how to do whatever that thing is.
Right.
So that knowledge sharing, has cheapened the appreciation, I think, for, um, a- authority figures or older figures in our kids' lives too. Um, so that's a hard fight too, I think,
It's
for
yeah,
parents now.
and it's also another barrier to connection, right? Because it takes away from both parties. It takes away from the person doing the teaching, the grandparent, the dad, the parent, the neighbor, whoever it is, right? The joy of being able to share and model for you.
Yes.
It takes that away from them as a human and individual, because you're going to self-source, and it takes away from the person that's self-sourcing, right, through YouTube or whatever, to have that connection and engagement and be able to expand the idea, right? So YouTube may show you step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, but maybe there's an alternate step in there. Maybe you don't have to do it exactly this way. Maybe there's a trick or a hack or something that gets lost in there, right? So
Yeah.
that ability to grow and share and expand our minds, and the value as individuals that we walk away from, because when you have human to human connection in teaching something, teaching someone how to tie a tie, teaching kids how to tie their shoelaces, right?
Mhm.
That connection is huge. And yes, you can put your kid in front of a YouTube video and they'll learn how to tie a tie and they'll learn how to tie shoelaces, but they will not have experienced giving somebody else joy. They will not have experienced that they are capable of bringing smiles and happiness and gratitude, right? And so that in itself, I believe, is more self-isolating, right? Which
Absolutely.
leads to loneliness, which is what, the space that you're operating in right now with your research. Um, how how did you get here, right? So your father is gone, 3 years old, you're raised by your mother and your sister, 9 years old. Your sister has this horrific car accident. How do you get to where you are today? What is your journey? What was your thinking? What things influenced your path? I'd love for you to share with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you said some things that were important there too around connection, and you're gonna hear some of that from me, right now, because you missing the connecting moments through those activities and learning new things. You're also missing mentoring. You yourself have had an amazing career. Anybody would be very lucky to have the opportunity to learn from you because there's so many things that you can pass on. The information that you've gathered on your career, the information you're gathering in your career. So watching a YouTube video doesn't replace all of the value that they're going to get from knowing you, not only from the skills they gain, but knowing you and having you as a connection point. So I just want to point that out because that's one thing that helped me along the way. So, I had those horrific events, and I'll be honest, I was headed down a very bad pathway, and I got into quite a bit of trouble in junior high. I actually got expelled from the school I was in right as I was going into the ninth grade, and I was introduced to a person named Patrick Steele. And Patrick Steele taught Shotokan karate in Tennessee. And he actually was recently, a few years back, featured in a New York Times article, which was wild to see him there. I couldn't believe it that they had focused on him, but he is an amazing person. So at the same time, not surprised that he was there. But Patrick was a corrections officer at the detention center for youth in Carroll County, which was close to where I had grown up. And essentially, I was told that I needed to work with Patrick, and I could, work with him in the setting where he taught Shotokan karate, or I could work with him in the other setting. And luckily for me, I ran into him, and he gave me purpose and let me know that there was a space for me. If I wanted to fight, I could do that in a constructive way, and gave me tools to help me um, understand more about myself. And through, that was my first person that really put me on a path, I think, to success. And then, reflect, so I'm, going through high school with Patrick, and come to find out the year that I was going to graduate high school, they had released a scholarship program in the state of Tennessee for in-state schools. They wanted to have the lottery there. In order to have the lottery, they had to allocate some of the money they generated from the lottery to higher ed. So I was one of the first recipients of the Hope Tennessee Lottery Scholarship. And luckily for me, it covered my tuition to go to the University of Tennessee. It did not cover room and board. So that was another thing. So I ended up running into a guy named Larry. And at this point, I graduated early. So I actually started school when I was 4, almost got skipped up another grade. So I graduated right after I turned 17. Turned 17 in January, graduated in May. And so it's the summertime. I'm trying to figure out where to live because I've been kicked out. I had actually been dating a girl, and she was pregnant, and I was in trouble. I was about to become a statistic. I got accepted into college, had a way to pay for it, which blew my mind, and didn't have anywhere to live. So this guy named Larry Garner, his son, had gotten into some trouble, and he had built him an apartment above his garage, but he wasn't using it. So Larry agreed that if I paid his cable bill, that I could live above his garage.
All right.
So started living above his garage, and got my bachelor's degree in fine art, got another bachelor's degree in fine art, got a master's in education, and then got my doctorate in business administration, global operations management. And I did the master's and doctorate online while working. And I had started teaching after my bachelor's degree. They cut the art program, so I had to find another place to work. So I went back to retail, which is what I did whenever I was in college for my undergrad. Came in as a manager though, and they actually moved me to New England. So I'm finishing my master's, finishing my doctorate. I'm living in New England as and working in retail as a manager. Shifted to be an adjunct professor for Southern New Hampshire University. And started working as an associate vice president at Toronto Dominion Bank for a couple of years, and then landed a role as a associate dean at Southern New Hampshire University after teaching with them for about 3.5 years part-time as an adjunct. So, and the rest is kind of history as far as being in higher education and what I currently do. But it was just determination and these few key people, and I would say, besides Patrick Steele and Larry Garner, the faculty at the University of Tennessee at Martin, the art faculty there, they really changed my life, gave me such a different perspective on what I could do with my life, because to that point, all I had seen was rural West Tennessee. So farms, factories, and the 101st Airborne out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky there. That's really your options. That's the three things that you got going for you there. But I just luckily, um, by some kind of alignment of a miracle, got funded to go to school, went to, and met those people, met those faculty members there. Um, Jason Stout and Dr. Carol Eckert, Melanie Hollis, um, Lane Last. He's actually passed at this point, but that's when I go back to Tennessee. That's who I go have dinner with, my wife's family and those faculty members, because they mean so much to me. But yeah, it's just those key people that I still keep in contact with, and knowing that, I know the importance of you know the people that I meet now, like you, and also the people that I meet that I can benefit. So I try to do my best to recognize that helping somebody do one thing can have this incredible impact. Larry Garner letting me live above his garage.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't have any other option. That was my option. I'm here because Larry Garner let me live above his garage. So,
I love that. I love that. It is a great story of determination and grit and and perseverance, really, right? Coming There's all, generational traumas and yeah, there's generational wealth and there's generational trauma, all right? Um,
yeah.
and I love that. At what point did you become enamored with human connection? Like
Mm,
where was that birth of that passion and that fire inside of you?
mm. I for me personally, I think it probably started like the spark in my bachelor's program, and meeting people there, because I was meeting such a diverse group of people. Um, in rural West Tennessee, it's if nothing else, the thought there around religion, or the way things quote unquote should be, is pretty consistent among the general populace. So when I went to, I was in my bachelor's program, and we started learning. I mean, through fine art, you learn about all kinds of things. Some of the earliest art was religious based, or cave paintings. If you want to go back that far, so I'm getting this diversity of thought through my study, and then I'm meeting so many different people that it's like, in that moment when you're being exposed to so many new things, you have one of two options. One, you clam, you revert, you turtle shell, you do whatever you want to call it, and you really push back into your belief systems that you've been taught, that you've been driven into your whole life, or you really become more objective and open up, and really take the time to experience all these people around you, or this new information that you're getting. And in that moment, when I guess it was crunch time for me to revert or open, I opened. And um I really loved experiencing not only the different artwork, but like the different cultural experiences that I was getting through people. Like, I had at the time, there was a huge population of international exchange students from Saudi Arabia, for instance. And I got to meet with them and understand, and they were really excited to connect with me on their cultural beliefs. And they heard I had a big event coming up in my life. They threw me a party, like, and it had foods from that they would traditionally make. They made those for me and invited me to their residence. I'm like, why are we doing this? And they're like, well, you got this big life-changing thing happening for you, so like we wanted to celebrate. And I was like, this is mind-blowing. Like, nobody would have cared. Like, it didn't feel like that pivotal of a thing. Reflectively from the way I was raised, it just, those things weren't celebrated. So I'm like, these people barely know me, and they're willing to pour all this energy and effort into my experience, the excitement with me. Like, this is wild to me, you know. And then even just meeting people from around the United States that chose to come to the University of Tennessee to pursue their studies. It was just I wanted to know it all. I wanted to learn about it all. And then, whenever I encountered social capital later on in my doctorate, because I got to a point post college where I was kind of head down. Got to take care of my family, got to work, got to do all these things, got to pay bills. Um, and when I start writing my dissertation, I come across social capital and I truly understand what they're trying to measure. It just like reignited in me. Like, I want to tell the story of social capital. I want people to understand it, know it, understand how to utilize it, understand its impact on our society, and understand how to connect better. And then, through these later years with the other researchers, just finding my niche, finding my place in that conversation, um, and really wanting to focus once again on human connection and what that means. And unfortunately, seeing the detriment of us not connecting. Um, Yeah, it just feels like I've gotta give back. That's my way to give
Yeah.
back.
I love that. I love that. I love the awakening, right? It was almost like it was an awakening in you, right? Because you don't know what you don't know until you know it,
Yeah.
right? And I love that you took that opportunity to go to the university and study and with everything else that you had going on. I love that you pushed forward and did it all, and that you were exposed to these things, because a lot of us do stay within the tiny towns or tiny areas that we are born and raised in, and don't spread our wings. And if we don't spread our wings, we limit the exposure that we have, which really, if you think about it, you have this one life that you live, right? And so isn't it fantastic? I mean, I love this podcast because I get to talk to fantastic people like you, Dr. Mask, and to understand and learn and hear people's stories. And so others listening to this that are, you know, maybe on the younger side and kind of lost, and, or feel like they are lacking human connection. Go out there, right? Go make
Yes.
yourself available. Go to the park with a soccer ball and find somebody to kick it with you, right? To just it's silly, but it's very vulnerable. Go for a walk. Say hello to people when you enter an elevator, right?
Mhm.
Give presence. Command your presence and your space, but also give the ability for others to enter into an engagement with you, right? In a very welcoming tone. I think that is so, so huge. So when I was at NYU, we were talking about AI and our jobs going away, and managing businesses and AI and leadership and all of that stuff. And a lot of the students said to me, well, if you had a piece of advice, what would it be for us to be successful? And so I said to them, networking, networking, networking. Networking is huge, huge, because you get to meet people, you get to learn from their experiences, right? Doing something yourself, by yourself, when other people have done it before, and not meeting them and asking them questions about it and just getting it done yourself, is such a disservice to you as a human, right? Because maybe you'll make a mistake that you didn't need to make, because person number 1, 2, or 3 that you spoke to told you about that. Maybe you could do it more efficiently, maybe you can do it in a different manner, right? It's not to dissuade you from doing something, but maybe, work smarter, not harder. And part of that work smarter piece, I think a huge element of that is engagement, right? We go and we research online and we Google things and we read things and we do all of that, but we never engage in a back and forth conversation with a human. And I tell people all the time, and this is not just students, this is also peers like myself. You and I connected because I reached out to you. I saw your profile. I thought it was incredible. And this is how I get all of my guests, right? Something in me sparks some kind of curiosity. I reach out, I say, hi, how are you? This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. If you want to talk and connect, please feel free to send me a response. And then I talk and I connect because I genuinely love to understand. And every individual has a journey and a story that we can share to help others realize the bias they didn't have, right? What I didn't expect you to look like that. Or give them some encouragement and so they can find their inner grit and determination and get it done, right? Just because life threw you a curveball, so through a choice that you made or didn't, right? Whatever that is, you
Mhm.
have now this set of circumstances and there is still a path forward, right? Look for that silver lining to the cloud, because I truly believe that even in the darkest of things, there is a blessing to be had and to be learned. So I love the work that you're doing. I love human connection. Um, I love to say I love humans and I hate people. I really, that it, that reason to be mean and nasty and just um non-value add, that kind
Mhm.
of people-y thing, uh it really gets to me because everybody has something to contribute. Everybody adds some kind of value, and those that are just there to be negative and disruptive, cut them out. Don't engage, and let them eventually find themselves in a self-isolation place. Um, so thank you for all of that work. I am super excited for you to finish up all of your research, and I would love if you are willing to come back and talk to us about that research so we can continue this conversation. I love it. I think that it is super important. Human connection is super, super important. So I would love to be able to have a conversation about the research that you're doing, and what it's brought to us, and where you're going to take it. And if share it with, if we can start to normalize this and start to get people on board and learn from the research that you've done, and we can share it so we can carry it forward, I think that would be fantastic. So if you're willing, I'd love to have you back as soon as you're ready.
Absolutely. No, I would love to do that, and I hope that the next time we connect, I can hopefully have some suggestions. I mean, I recognize we're all individual human beings, and we all have our own individual ways that we like to connect. But I would, at the very least, like to give us some kind of guideline where we can have something other than our default behaviors that are failing us to understand that, you know, we need to spend X amount of time connecting in person. We could spend X amount of time on the phone, whatever that looks like.
Right.
I'm hoping to at least be able, like I said, give a blueprint and hopefully it'll be beneficial. I know that, particularly for my ADHD brain, I definitely need one. My hyperfixation on social capital is why I connect. Beyond that, I'm a head down operator, and
Yeah.
that's what I would be doing. I would have my head down and be working on tasks. So,
But I'll challenge that. And I will tell you that what makes you a good head down operator is your ability to understand perspective across multiple people and places, right? Successful operators understand how everything contributes to smooth operating process and procedure. And in order to do that, you have to interact and understand the contributions of each piece of the puzzle, right? Each piece of the puzzle, each piece of the pie brings something to the table and you have to understand. So in your execution, you may be a head down operator, but in your knowledge of getting it done, you you couldn't possibly be. I could never expect that.
well, I appreciate that. I really
I could
do.
never expect that. But I want to thank you so much. I can keep having this conversation with you for the next 4 hours, but I will say thank you. And I will look forward to having another conversation, and diving even deeper into this because there are so many other aspects of this that I would like to dive into. Can you, in closing, give us some closing comments, some suggestions, something that you would like everybody to action on? I know you're operationally minded. So is there an execution task? Go out and meet 3 people a week. I don't know what it is. What is it? What is it that you would like to encourage our audience to do to better support the work that you do?
Absolutely. Be intentional each day about some form of connection. Um, if you want to set a goal for yourself that can be individual to you, but just make sure that you're being intentional about connecting with other people, whether it be one person, 3 people. If you think that it would be beneficial for you to run into people to take a walk, take a walk. At the very least, you did something good for your health. Go get a cup of coffee, whatever, but connect and know those people around you. Recognize whoever you interact with as a person. It's not just a barista, it's not just a crossing guard, it's a person. And there's
Right.
an opportunity there for you to show that you recognize that they're a person, and people appreciate that so much. I would say too, realize that most situations, if not all, come to you objectively and you assign meaning to them. So just remember
Yes.
that. And when you are the giver of information, realize that the only thing that you can own is your intentionality. And when you're a receiver of the information, know that the only thing that you can own is your reaction. And so when you're in a conversation with people, just remember intentionality is the givers and the reaction is the receivers. And if someone is offended, upset, whatever, like we discussed earlier, just know that you don't have to own that. They're allowed to be upset. They're allowed to have feelings. And, you are allowed to own your intention behind that. And hopefully, when everybody's more regulated, you can come back and discuss it further. But in the moment, in a heated moment, it's okay that somebody's heated. That's completely okay. You don't have to own that. Yeah, that's the things I got.
I love that. You don't have to attend every argument. I love it. I love it.
That's
I
right.
love it. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, today for joining us at the Give Back Lab. Until next time, I am your host, Daniela DeGrandi. Speak soon.
Thanks for joining us today in the Give Back Lab. If today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you just feel seen, share it forward. That's how change begins. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking truth, and giving back in your own way. The lab is always open.